Good evening, everyone. We still have people kind of flooding in, so we'll get started in a few minutes. But thanks for coming. I have Judy here with me. Pull my face out.
Yeah, because it's hi everyone.
Hi, Judy. Hi, Jeff. It's Barb.
Hello, Barb.
Eileen Harden saying hi.
A lot of people coming in.
Uh-oh.
So I'll get going. This is, by our count, the 29th Water Connects Us All annual meeting. Boy, people are really coming in now. And I hope it's our last one for a while virtually, although I did get a lot of comments after the last couple of years from people that are typically out of town in the fall, snowbirds and so forth, and they appreciated being able to join. So if we do in-person meetings in the future, maybe we'll try and keep a virtual component to it so we can get more people engaged in the meeting. Oh boy, they're all coming in still. So I have people muted when they come in, but there is a chat function. And if you have a question or want to make a comment, please go ahead and use the chat function. I heard from Representative Rick Hansen, and he was actually out of town right now. He's in Washington, D.C. at some event for legislators, state legislators that they're having out there at the White House, and he's on a plane at present, so is unable to make it, which is a pity. But Sara Strommen will be here later. I think she's also in transit, so it's a wonderful that she was willing to kind of try and jump on the best she could. And I'm sorry if I seem a little bit distracted. People are still kind of coming into the meeting. We'll kind of get going here and I'll do the best I can. So, you know, the MLR team, we've been together for a while. We have Henry Erdman, government relations, our lobbyist. He's been with us since 2002, I believe. I remember not long after we started working together, I was outside kind of, getting some fresh air outside of the House office building. And a man by the name of Andy Gilday, who is the husband of the Minnesota Supreme Court Justice, Gilday, said, "Oh, you're working with Henry." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, you're lucky to have Henry." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Well, Henry knows his topics, and he delivers what he promises when he promises to deliver it." And that has proven to be very true over the years. I wanted to kind of run through some of the things that Henry's delivered. Removal of cabins from the excess school operating levies. That's about $23 to $27 million a year burden on cabins in Minnesota. Cap on increases to the property tax evaluations. Market-driven property value increases from 2002 through 2009, which was the peak of the real estate boom. So that saved every lake home and cabin owner in the state thousands of dollars a year. Starting in 2009, Henry successfully lobbied for the first significant changes to the state's aquatic invasive species laws since Eurasian milfoil was found in Lake Minnetonka in the fall of 1987, 22 years earlier. He increased funding for the Minnesota DNR AIS programs from about 5 million, sorry about that, annually to about 8.5 million in 2013. Today, he's been working and we've gotten it pushed up to about $10 million a year. In addition, Henry successfully lobbied to create the county AIS prevention aid, totaling over $70 million a year to local AIS, over $70 million, $10 million each year to local AIS programs. Henry lobbied to create the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center, working with Dr. Peter Sorensen in 2014. And then the next year, it was a bonding year, and Henry worked to upgrade the lab, so they were able to get bonding to build out the lab that they needed. And in 2020, we worked for baseline funding for the Minnesota Aquatic Invasive Species Research Center. That was $910,000 annually. And that'll be going forward, which is wonderful news for them. And Henry's never asked for an increase in his fee. And it's because we're a small organization, not because it's a bad investment or, he's not worth the money. So we all owe a lot of gratitude to Henry. Lobbyists get a bad rap sometimes, and I'm here to tell you that they're not all bad. Many of them are very good, and Henry's excellent. The other person, let me see if I can find him on here, is Tim Ward, who is our new executive administrator. And let me see if I can find him on here. Because I would like to have Tim say hello, if I can get him on. Tim was a CPA and worked for a number of Fortune 500 companies and ran small businesses. And we're very lucky to have Tim. So Tim, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it works. I just want to say how pleased I am to be part of this organization and able to support Jeff and the really important mission of MLR. And I've been kind of amazed at the accomplishments of such a small organization. It really speaks to the power of the membership and and the leadership of Jeff. So thank you.
Thanks, Tim. People are still coming in here. So I also thought I would introduce the board. Some have been with us for a long time, others not as long, but Barb Halbach-Fishberg is our secretary, and her property is in Detroit Lake, Becker County. And Barb was one of the first person, I think it was 2007, 2008, we were at one of these events, one of these symposium deals. And there was Barb and a woman, Ann Latham, and they caught me and said, can you sit down for a minute and talk to us? And I said, sure. And they laid out AIS, what they were seeing, what they thought the threats were, what needed to be done, and really gave me a really complete education on it. And I've been amazed that over the years, now, this many years later, almost 20 years later, pretty much everything they shared was spot on and proved to be accurate. And I'm grateful for Barb's information, her knowledge, her energy. So thank you, Barb. Sue Henkin Thielen. Her property is Lake Washburn in Cass County. And let me admit another person. And Sue was with the MLR board back in the, I think, first days. And was on the board for a while, then I think got busy with life and kids and, the things we get busy with, and resigned from the board. But then a few years ago, probably like, 7 or 8, 9 years ago, called me up and wanted to come back, was interested in getting involved again, and it's been great. Sue, you will probably meet or hear from. We have started a focus on building membership, building out the organization. I think we need to get a little bit bigger in order to really serve the mission. And so Sue's going to help us with that, which I'm excited about. And her background is in marketing and communication, so that'll be a big help. John James is our treasurer, and he's a very good treasurer. He was Commissioner of Revenue under Rudy Perpich, so our books are no problem for him. His place is in Ramsey County on Lake Jarvis. John and I met many years ago. He wrote an article that I saw that was called, "Are We Loving Our Lakes to Death?" And so I called him up and said, can we talk? And we did. And we've been working together in one form or another ever since. And John's been on the board for a number of years. Mary Manns, her place is on Caribou Lake in St. Louis County. And Mary's been with Minnesota Lakes and Rivers for a long time. She originally came in and she was interested in an issue, and we worked on the issue together, and she testified at the legislature, and she's a former president of the organization. She's just a very steady, focused, knowledgeable, wonderful person, and we all benefit a lot from having her on the board. And then our newest board member is Carrie Oli Cusack. Her place is on Burnside Lake in St. Louis County. And the issue came up of aquatic invasive species getting into the boundary waters. But the boundary waters, as we all know, lake associations are usually the primary driver of aquatic invasive species programs. And the boundary waters has no lake association. So Carrie and a number of other people began meeting, and we started working on it. And one of the issues that we came up with as we worked to define the problem with that area was it's geographically diverse. So it's a lot of accesses spread across, many, 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 many miles of countryside, some of which are very, very remote. So you can't get from one part of that landscape to the other without kind of going all the way back up into Ely and then maybe down to Tower and then back down south again, or all the way over to Grand Marais. And it's also politically complex. So there's 3 counties up there, Cook, Lake, and St. Louis County, each with their own soil and water conservation districts. The Forest Service is in charge of the U.S. Forest Service land. The whole area is administered by the 1854 Treaty Authority. There's the International Joint Commission that really deals with, issues along the border up there. And so we began to pull together in a civic organizing pilot, kind of an exploration. And Carrie has really kind of stepped up and is moving into a leadership position there. So I'm grateful, and it's wonderful to have her. So thank you, Carrie. And then Judy Corrigan. And Judy is here with me now. And I would say the 29-year success of Minnesota Lakes and Rivers is really due to the hard work, dedication, intelligence, and skill of Judy Corrigan. She has been with MLR since it first formed in 1993, and her steady hand has helped guide this organization during the fragile times when we were forming into a new century, into the information age, through a recession and a pandemic. Her work has benefited the current generation of shoreline owners and future generations as well. Judy has been the indispensable partner to me, and it is all of our great good fortune that she dedicated her considerable skills, creativity, talent, and hard work to Minnesota Lakes and Rivers. On August 1st, Judy retired from her role with MLR, so she's retired now. When I began in the executive director role, it was Judy who trained me into the practices of the organization. And Judy and I met frequently, we still do, and discussed decisions large and small, from political strategy to the decision to give up our offices in Bloomington and downsize just before the 2008 recession, the transition to online remote collaboration before the pandemic hit. Judy has had valuable foresight. She read and edited our mailings, annual reports, and newsletters. She was the business administrator, customer service representative, marketing coordinator, media relations, event planner, political advisor, program manager, and graphic designer. Judy's ethics are beyond sterling, and the business practices she implemented provide a remarkable level of transparency, which, given her innate honesty, were almost completely untested. She can see the big picture, but never loses track of the minute details. Even in the most difficult legislative sessions, Judy never succumbed to cynicism. Her official title in MLR was always Minister of Truth. She never sought any limelight, and she's still kind of sitting off to the side here right now. And I might have been the face that you see, but Judy really is the heart and soul of MLR. Beyond her competence, intelligence, and creativity, Judy is very, very kind. She is hilarious. She is a great mother. She was a wonderful daughter. She is a dear friend. Judy grew up on a dairy farm in Glencoe, Minnesota, the second oldest in a family of 4 kids. Both her parents were deaf, and so Judy learned sign language. She became the family's translator, the interface between doctors and teachers and others and her parents. She carried this patience and ability to communicate into her working life. She received her undergraduate degree from the College of St. Benedict's in business administration with a minor in economics, and then earned an MBA from St. Thomas University. She worked in sales and marketing for Sandoz until 1990, and then for Beaumont Bennett, and finally WKB Marketing. She transitioned over as MSRPO began in 1993. At first she was part-time, but over the years she grew the organization. She took on more and more responsibility and hours. Judy is a master gardener, people, organizations, and living things grow under her attention. A few years ago, she and her neighbor dug up the lawn between their homes and installed a rain garden to sequester the runoff from their roofs. This year, her Joe Pye weed was taller than me. The Monardia was heavy with bees of all descriptions. Her yard is filled with birds and bugs and flowers. Judy makes the world around her beautiful. I am grateful for the time we worked together. I am grateful for Judy's friendship and support. I am grateful for all of the work Judy has done for MLR over the years. I am grateful that she will continue to help guide our organization as a board member. Even though Judy has retired, she will continue to handle MLR's mailings and has agreed to remain as the treasurer of the MSRPO PAC. Becoming friends with Judy is one of the great gifts of this work. Thank you, Judy. So you can say hi.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Jeff, for your kind words. It's been a great opportunity for me to work with MLR, and I hope to continue to do that well into the future. Thanks.
Thank you, Judy. I think that's the most she's ever said at an annual meeting ever. Let me look at our time here. Let's see if we have Sara Strommen on. We're still getting people in. She is not on yet, so we'll keep our eyes open. And maybe I'll just kind of press ahead with the agenda and we'll wait for Sara Strommen to come on. So this is do what you can, where you are, with what you have. This is something that I learned from my Scoutmaster way back in the day. And it's something that I've kind of rediscovered in this work in recent years. There's a lot of problems with our lakes at present. Last year, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency found that 56% of the lakes and rivers, the surface waters in Minnesota, were impaired. It's a turning point, really. And most people, many people, and I was among them, assumed that the DNR or the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency or one of these, the county or something, was in charge of keeping the lakes clean and that they would do what needed to be done to keep the lakes clean. And the job's too big. No organization can do it. Regulations are hard. They're hard to enforce. They're expensive to enforce. How many people would you need? You would need a lake manager for every lake almost. And so the reality is that they cannot. They lack the resources necessary. And if we are going to protect our lakes and rivers, we must do it ourselves. We must make it happen. And that's really kind of why I think an organization like MLR and lake associations are so key. One of the big pieces. So if I look at where I am, doing what I can with what I have, where I am, we all have lakeshore. And this is a pretty good place to start. And the DNR has been assessing lake health and shoreline health. And this is a map of what they've found. And you can see that the blue triangles are the ones that are healthy. Orange is somewhat in trouble. Red is more impaired. And the problem is phosphorus. And when we look at the nutrients in Minnesota and our soils, there's plenty of nitrogen. There's plenty of other things. Judy could tell me what they were. But the one that really affects plant growth that is in small quantities is phosphorus. So what that means is if you add phosphorus, then you're going to get plant growth and or algae growth if you add phosphorus to the lake. So 1 pound of phosphorus can produce 500 pounds of algae. The typical, what you see, the lawn to the lake, rainwater and snow melt runs between the roots of grass and the hard packed soil and can contribute 0.2 pounds of phosphorus per lot per summer. So if you look at 100 lots like that, that's 20 pounds of phosphorus being added to the lake, which is 10,000 pounds of algae. The summers are getting warmer. Ice out is happening earlier and earlier in the year. Ice in is happening later. My place is on Lake Vermilion. We're out, we have 7 miles of open water out in front of us, a little scallop bay. And the entire month of October, we had this right in front of us, this blue-green algae, which is toxic. So it's kind of a big deal. This is why we started looking at things like Lake Stewart. Dorothy Whitmere from Gull Lake originally, and some of her compatriots on Gull Lake started Lake Stewart. And we found out about it, and I started working with Dorothy to try and adapt it statewide. And that was really last year. 2 years ago, I guess, was the kind of the rollout, and it was during the pandemic and it was difficult. Last summer was our first real kind of full summer of it. And it's a pretty simple, direct program. And the idea really is to change the social norm. So change the social norm away from kind of a more traditional suburban or urban lot on a lake to a landscaping and management style that values water quality. And this chart here kind of shows the way social movements go. Really, you get to about that 13.5 to the early majority, 34%, and you hit a critical mass. And the following adopters come pretty quickly. So the outcomes from the last 2 years, 259 Lake Stewart quizzes were taken, 238 site visits. So a trained volunteer going to the shoreline, talking with a shoreline person about how they want to manage their shoreline. Last summer, there were 19 lake associations engaged in the work. 6.3 miles of shoreline were impacted. If you do the math that I showed earlier, that's 28,209 pounds of phosphorus sequestered, which would mean more than 14 tons of algae prevented from being in the lake. In addition, we can document at least 1 mile of shoreline that has actually been restored. So, some people haven't developed their shoreline and they meet the Lake Stewart criteria. Others have had to do work in order to fit the bill. Another thing is agricultural runoff is a pretty big deal. And we've been working with the Department of Ag and some of the groups up in Pine River Watershed Alliance, Happy Dancing Turtle, Sustainable Farmers Association, to develop this Up the Creek meets. And really what it is it's making food available from farmers that produce food in a way that doesn't impact water quality, and connecting lake association or lake people with this food. I get all my meat from these guys now, from one of our farmers, Hollister Family Farm. It's delicious, it's cheaper, and I know that it's not trashing the watershed. So we hope to be able to kind of expand this in the future. But go on our website and take a look. And if you are interested in this, please let me know. If you know farmers that might be interested in it, please let me know. And then the Stop Starry program was really a focus this last summer. We were able to get a grant from the Environment and Natural Resources Trust Fund. And we, the science shows that if people have the tools they need to clean their boats, they are far more likely to do it. So give them the tools where they need them, when they need them. And the outside of the equipment is, has AIS messages. They're made in Minnesota. We were able to deliver 20 units. And some of them, it kind of started early spring, and some of them went out just 3 weeks ago. I think Grand Lake got theirs about 3 weeks ago. There was a pretty significant climb with the permits and the ownership agreements and all of that. We've got that almost completely worked out now. But there were 6,000 uses just with the equipment that we were able to get out kind of in the course of the summer. In addition, this top unit that you see is at a resort, Oak Haven Resort. And that was a really amazing story. I heard that they had starry stonewort. They were listed as infested, and I went up there and met with the people. They were from Chicago. They had bought the resort the year before in the fall. They didn't know what starry stonewort was. The spring started and the starry stonewort started to grow. And by midsummer, their entire waterfront was socked in with starry stonewort. And they found out what it was. It was found by somebody from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwa, one of their natural resources managers. And so working with the tribe, who's kind of part of our civic organizing effort up there, they were able to test diver-assisted suction harvest, a DASH, and make adjustments to it and develop a way to maybe treat the starry stonewort by removing it. And he was, I talked to Matt, the guy who owns the resort, a couple of weeks ago, and he's thrilled. He said every single person that came into the resort used the equipment, and only a couple did he have to encourage. People that were driving by on the highway would stop and pulled in and used it. He is really, really excited about it. I gave a presentation a few weeks ago to the community of Minnesota resorts, and they're very interested in getting this equipment on lakes, infested lakes, because it's self-service and it's free. So I was very, very pleased with the impact on the resorters. The Starry Stonewort program, Stop Starry, kind of brings in, well, I'll pause here because Commissioner Strommen has just showed up, and let me make her a speaker. Yes, Commissioner Strommen.
Hi, can you hear me and see me?
Yeah, well, I don't know if I can see you.
Okay. Supposedly my video is on, but I'm not seeing myself.
Okay, I'll stop the share.
Oh, there.
There she is.
How about now?
Yes, now.
Okay.
And I remember the last time you addressed us was, I think it was right after you were appointed to the position.
Yeah.
And your goal, if I remember, was broaden the base of people, get more people outside using our resources. And then the pandemic hit. And boy, everybody was outside using our resources. It was kind of be careful what you
I was,
wish.
I was ahead of the times.
Yeah, very prescient, very prescient.
Yeah, I often laugh about that because I think back to that now and I think, wow, I could have had like the most aggressive, impressive campaign to try to get people outdoors. And I never would have achieved what the pandemic did. So I'm sorry that it took a global pandemic for people to rediscover the outdoors. But if there's one silver lining, I think that was it, is that as Minnesotans and as people, we reconnected and remembered what the outdoors means for not only those recreational pursuits and not only the economy, but what it really means to our health and our wellness and the good of our souls. And I think, you know, just people as humans. So I count that as the silver lining of a really tough couple of years.
Yes, definitely. Well, and I've noticed, I wanted to let people know that I think one of your goals, what I've seen is the DNR is more accessible, the commissioner's office is more accessible. You're starting back up the commissioner office hours. And I think people can sign up to participate in that. It's on the DNR website, and that's a really great opportunity. It's different topics. I saw the email come in today, but I didn't see what the topic was. I haven't opened it yet.
I think we will be doing a year in review because it's December. And so I think a good time to reflect on some of the successes and accomplishments from the last year. And hopefully, as you know, Jeff and others, if you choose to participate, will know it's not very much of the commissioners talking. It's we try to facilitate a conversation, even though it's online. So we hope it'll also be an opportunity for people to share with us what they think some of the highlights are from the past year and maybe a little bit about what they hope to have us focus on. But yeah, being engaged in conversation is something that has been incredibly important to me personally and to the entire leadership team at the DNR. And so the COVID pandemic was hard from that standpoint, but something that, I think we really realize is, when people look at the DNR mission, they're really focused on the what we do and it's the protection of natural resources and the outdoor recreation and the sustainable use of natural resources. But I've really come to believe that the most powerful part of our mission maybe are those first words that say we work with Minnesotans to do those other three things. And I think it really is the power of partnership and the power of a natural resource agency working with Minnesotans. And so actually, to that point, I'm joining you from Bemidji tonight. We were in Grand Rapids today, connecting with DNR staff and some partners from that region. And tomorrow we'll be with DNR staff and partners in Bemidji. And the entire commissioner's team is with me. We wanted to make sure that we made stops to all 4 of our regional offices to meet with staff and partners before we start the new year. So, we have another term. We're blessed and honored to have another term, another 4 years ahead of us. So really interested to, not only think about our own thoughts about what's important for the years upcoming, but what our staff across the state and what Minnesotans across the state think.
Yeah, definitely. And before you were on, I was making the point that, there's 56% of the lakes in Minnesota are impaired. And DNR or Minnesota Pollution Control Agency can't fix this by themselves. A lot of people think, oh, the DNR is taking care of the lakes and all these other things, but it's really about the partnerships, I think, is the only way to really get the work done with 10,000 plus lakes in the state. Would you have 10,000 lake specialists, one for each? I mean, how would it work? So lake associations, it's good that they're there. It's good that they are engaged. And I made that point earlier. I didn't give you any topics. So I guess, what do you want to share?
Well, appreciate that. And it's always nice when I'm always happy to take topics, and I'm pretty good at following instructions. But I think a couple things. First of all, I just, and to the point about partnership and all the work that lake associations do, one of the things that I wanted to make sure I say is thank you. Thank you for that partnership, and thank you to all the folks who do work really hard as part of lake associations, and who just display incredible passion for usually a particular lake, but in the whole lakes all across the state. And having the ability to work with lake associations and the ability to work with people who are so passionate about a place is just, for me, one of the highlights of this job, and a reason I keep doing it. So I don't want to forget to say thank you. I think the other thing that I would maybe highlight is the opportunity we have in the upcoming legislative session, and with our biennial state budget. And as folks probably heard the news on the forecast that was released yesterday, we're now looking, last year it was a $9 billion budget that we were hoping to see invested in a variety of priorities across state Minnesota. That's now grown to 17.6 billion. And so one of the things that we're really continuing to push is for what we believe is an opportunity for a once in a generation reinvestment in our outdoor infrastructure and in conservation and our outdoor experiences. So we have a initiative called Get Out More, and that more is modernizing outdoor recreation experiences. And that's everything from some of the more obvious things like state parks and state trails and our campgrounds. And as folks on this call know, as if folks visit state parks, a lot of that infrastructure was built a generation ago and could use some renewal and investment. We were talking with some of our parks folks today, just the changes in how people recreate. There are many fewer tents, people camping in tents in our state park, and many more people rolling up in their campers. And our campgrounds frankly weren't built with that in mind. You think of our boat ramps were certainly not built with today's types of equipment in mind. They weren't built with stormwater best practices in mind. And that's something that I know as lake associations, you all promote very heavily, and we would like to be a partner in that and doing the best we can do. And then the other thing is they weren't built with AIS in mind. And so, one of the things that, in fact, we were talking about this earlier today with some of our partners in Grand Rapids, the education is really important. We can ask people to do the right thing. We can explain to people how to do the right thing. And the reality is when they pull their boat out of the water at the boat ramp and there is no space to pull over to, check your boat, to get your plug out, to get the weeds off the trailer, or there are no tools there. It's hard for even people who want to do the right thing, because there's probably a line of people behind you, urging you to get out of the way. And so I think, one of the things we realize is there's an opportunity as we reinvest in those boat accesses to not only keep in mind the typical types of infrastructure that we provide, the ramp and the docks and the parking, but to provide space for things for people to do the right thing with AIS, to provide space for things like the CD3 stations. I know that Minnesota Lakes and Rivers have played a big role in lake associations. And so, I think there's an incredible opportunity here. And that's something that I will continue to ask for help and partnership in, because this is really something, it's not just about funding the DNR, although we manage those facilities. It's really about funding things that we're all in together and things that Minnesotans care about.
Yeah, I mean, I think, a lot of the state park national forests were created kind of after the logging boom, and a lot of that land became public. So there was kind of that investment in the 1920s, and then again following World War II in the 60s and 70s. And you're right, it hasn't really happened in a while. There hasn't been the opportunity to really make that investment. So we've been kind of dealing with what we have, I guess.
Yeah, and the world looks very different, not only in the kinds of equipment and technology and the uses which I described, but AIS is an issue we weren't aware of and concerned about. Climate change is another huge driver that's going to significantly change the way people use the outdoors, interact with the outdoors, and the way we manage the outdoors. And so I think it's just really important to recognize that we are long overdue, and that we're really at a critical juncture. And I would also say that if we can't afford to invest in the environment and the outdoors with a $17.6 billion surplus, I don't know when we would be able to afford to invest in those things. So I think it's just an incredibly important time for all of us to make sure that is, those kinds of investments are part of the conversation, and ultimately part of what the legislature chooses to invest in.
So I have some comments and questions here. Jane Krentz says, since the majority of the surplus is one-time money, we should invest in the environment. Pete Peshek says, central idea, make it easy to do the right thing. And then Wesley Sisson says, will there be a place for lake associations to make requests for that budget funding as a partner in this process? And I think, the office hours, I don't know what kind of listening sessions the DNR has planned, but Henry and I obviously will be down at the Capitol, and as these discussions are happening, we can weigh in too. But are you going to do any kind of, public conversations around this, or?
Well, I mean, those public conversations are, I would say is they're always ongoing, right? Every time we are having these kinds of conversations and hearing from people, then those are things that get reflected in our budget proposals. And so things like AIS, right, which we heard about from today, we've heard about from lake associations, that has been part of our calculus and coming up with that budget proposal. And again, I think, there's a long session ahead of us to make decisions about how that money gets spent. So, I hope lake associations will be part of that conversation, and ultimately what part might pass through to lake associations. I think, certainly we have some AIS grants and some other types of, sort of land restoration grants. A lot of what we're looking for, and this gets to Jane Krentz's, note that most of the budget surplus is one-time money. And so I do want to be clear that we are really focused on, one-time money is not going to serve us operationally for the long term. And so it really is about these one-time investments we can make in our parks, in our, restoring streams, in our fish hatcheries, and our boat ramps, to get us to the next generation. And then above and beyond that, as we look for funding operations, we have a related but separate initiative. And I would encourage people to check out our website and look at our For the Outdoors report. It's the number 4, the outdoors, and that outlines 4 steps that we're working on to address the long-term funding. So we want to take the opportunity with the surplus to invest one time, and then we don't want to get into this situation again and we're keeping our fingers crossed for another surplus. So it's really about how do we create a sustainable ongoing funding source. And so we're going to be working in 4 areas, and I would invite your group, Jeff, and individual lake associations to be part of these conversations. We're going to do some work internally to look at maximizing the use of funding sources we have, and particularly given some of the federal opportunities now, there's some opportunity to leverage. We're going to look at the application and use of fees that we have now. We're going to look at opportunities for direct support. So for example, we have an adopted WMA program. Maybe there's something more we do with lake associations and some of the volunteer work that directly benefits DNR and our resources. And then the last one will be looking at some other options for sustainable ongoing funding. And, that'll be a longer term conversation, but there are models from many other states. So there are probably other questions to get to, but that's a long way of saying both short-term on the one-time money, please be involved in the conversations. And then as we're engaged in thinking about the future over the next 4 years with these 4 action areas, we hope people will be part of those conversations as well.
Yeah, I'll work to get that stuff out to folks via our email system, and we'll be engaged in it, but we'll try and keep people as informed as we can. Kate Hagston from up on the Leech Lake Bend of Ojibwa wrote Prevention and Restoration, a program to pay for revegetation on shorelines. And I've been working with Paul Radomski and Steve Kloiber on the Shoreline project. And one of the ideas that we've been talking about a lot is, yes, there's a need for matching grants and some help with restorations of shoreline, but it's also the expertise. And I know, DNR used to have the shoreline program. It's kind of faded out and been replaced somewhat with AIS efforts. People got shifted over as the priorities changed. But is there are you looking at, trying to build out that shoreline restoration piece at all? Is that on your?
We have in our Get Out More proposal, there's specifically some dollars for restoration projects that, would be more public land kind of things, and would be some of the restorations like we do in our, state parks or at our boat ramps. Some of the dam removal projects that we're doing, for example. I think that the question about capacity and staffing is a really important one. And that again is that ongoing funding, right? Where we're not gonna be able to use one-time funding. But what I will say, and I think your observation echoes this, and a lot of our local government partners echo this, is we used to have more capacity to provide technical expertise and to be a better partner. And we simply don't. And so we will be having a conversation, with the appropriate legislative committees about those needs. And I think that's another area where if people are feeling like DNR is short and maybe not, spread a little bit too thin to provide some of that, that's helpful input as we try to prioritize where that go. But I will say we are short on the waters side of things, kind of across the board, especially given, how important that resource is, how stressed it is with impairments and climate change and those kinds of things. I mean, we should have more people working on water issues, not fewer.
Well, and I know climate change is on your radar, so to speak, but there's been an idea that I've heard a number of times and with increasing frequency, and this is the idea of carrying capacity of lakes. The boats are larger, more powerful, and there's more of them. Kind of during the pandemic, was hearing 30% jump in boats on lakes. Have you seen any signs? Has there been research into what a lake can sustain in terms of recreation types of boats, or is this something that's being discussed at the DNR?
I would say not from that high level that you just outlined. Clearly, right, we are having discussions about wake boats and the impact they have on shoreline and the impact they have on other users on the lake. And probably everybody on this call has a story about that. I certainly have mine. And then I think, but I have not seen research more generally or heard conversation more generally about, at what point are too many boats, do we get to too many boats or too many of a certain kind? I think most of the direction is aimed at the wake boats. And obviously you're aware of the boater education initiatives. And I think we're hopeful, we're appreciative that, folks have brought that forward. And I think the partnership between lake associations and marine manufacturers on that is a huge step forward. And hopefully that will get some traction this year because I think part of it is, numbers, and part of it is how are people using that equipment, right? And that's going to influence that capacity issue.
I keep thinking about when four-wheelers first came out and everybody was ripping through wetlands, but then they had the licensing and it's not the same level of problem, as it once was. So yeah, I'm hopeful that if we can get the licensing through the legislature, and come up with a good education program, that'll be 800, almost 900,000 people in the state that will have a much better understanding of the capacity of the boats and the impacts that boats can have. I mean, even things like, power loading at the boat ramps. You were talking about infrastructure earlier. I'm kind of trying to, agreed, and trail building for ATVs. I don't know if we could build wakeboard boat trails.
Probably.
Some questions about mining, copper mining, and pipelines. I'm kind of trying to scroll through these as quickly as I can. The idea of prevention with AIS is one of the things I thought I heard you say was making the boat ramps more, designing them, upgrading them to make AIS inspection, decon, these things more available, easier, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Bowser is having conversations about providing more resources for shorelines, lawns to lagoon. And I haven't seen the research, the second phase of the St. Anthony Falls lab, but that'll be looking at prop thrust impacts on our lake. A lot of kind of similar ones on shoreline, wake boats, AIS, and we've sort of covered some of those as well. Anything else you want to share before you leave? I'm grateful for you for taking the time this late at night to share with us.
True. I mean, my hotel in Bemidji is lovely, but it's actually great after spending a day that was very energizing day, talking with staff and partners, to have one more shot here, to see some partners and some faces and have a conversation about this. And then obviously we'll have more tomorrow. So, I mean, I'm incredibly grateful to be part of this DNR team. I'm incredibly honored to have another 4 years in this role. And I just, the best part is getting to work with people like all of you on this call who care really deeply about our resources. And my job would be pretty boring without all these partnerships. And Jeff in particular, I mean, just your organization and you and I've worked together for a number of years, and it's important to have those colleagues and those partnerships. So I'm incredibly grateful to all of you for what you do. And I know it's not easy. I know I've shared with this group in the past, my husband is a former Lake Association president. And that means I wrote a lot of president's news columns for him.
If you get the urge, I could always use some copy.
I was his ghostwriter. It's, and I know how incredibly hard he worked, and the rest of the board that he worked with worked, and that work made a difference on the lake. And it also, I mean, in addition to the resources, right, it builds community and civic engagement. So it's just incredibly important work. And I'm grateful to have so many lakes with associations of people who care, and then this group that brings everybody together. So I hope you all have a good evening, and have a, good winter season, and keep up the conversations. And yeah, Jeff, if you can send out some of those sites, join us at a commissioner's office hour, or join us in some of the outdoors conversations, or take a trip to the legislature and join us in a committee as we talk with the legislature.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And thank you so much for everything you're doing. I think in my role, I can see it like how, just like the DNR roundtable, the conversations are different. The audience is different. The people there are different. It's shifting. And I'm grateful to you for all the work you're doing, because I know it's like trying to turn a battleship, and it's very encouraging and very exciting. So thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you. See y'all next time.
Yeah, all next time.
All right. Good night.
Good night. I'll go back to try and get our presentation back up. So in terms of partnerships with the Stop Starry program, one of the things that's become pretty clear to me and some of the researchers at MASERC and some of the resource managers that I've been working with is this idea of early detection. We had a board member, Ted Johnson. He was president of the Washburn Lake Association, and it was back in 2009, 2010. He was concerned about Eurasian water milfoil. They had a boat ramp, and he was concerned that they would get milfoil. It was in the area. So he brought in someone from the DNR to teach people in the Lake Association how to identify different aquatic invasive species. One of them was milfoil. In the meantime, they laid out what they would do if they found milfoil or an AIS, who they would call it, the DNR. He reached out to them and found out what he would need to provide them, how to report it, what the permitting process was like, where they could get the permits, and what the process was. He reached out to applicators and found people who could apply chemicals to treat for these different things. He learned what it costs per acre. They created a little mini war chest of about $25,000 that they had prepared and waiting. And sure enough, a couple of years later, they got Eurasian water milfoil. Somebody found it. One of the women in the Lake Association was walking on the beach, and she found a fragment of milfoil. So they went into kind of overdrive, and it was a couple of acres, I think, the first patch that they found, and they treated it and hand pulled, and they had their plan in place. And I was at a meeting this summer in Cass County, Association of Cass County Lakes, and they were successful. There was no milfoil found in the lake last summer. Weaver Lake down here in the cities area is another example of this, where they were doing regular monitoring of the lake, surveying it using a weed rake, and scuba diving and teaching people how to identify it. They found milfoil, they treated it, they were able to get rid of it. It doesn't have AIS right now. Lake Sylvia was in a similar situation. They found a small patch of starry stonewort. I think it was 2016 maybe. Treated it pretty aggressively, hand pulled, had a program in place, and they were telling me this summer that they found a teacup's worth, literally 5 grams, just a little tiny bit. In this vein, we worked with Ramsey County, and I have it here, and it's called the New Infestation Response Plan. And it's really just a flow chart where you fill in the blanks so that you know what to do, and you can stage things in advance and budget in advance to an infestation. But it's might be possible, if you catch it early, to eradicate. And we didn't know if this was possible, but now we have evidence and it is. So we're working through the Stop Starry program, not only to put equipment out on the lake accesses, but at other lakes in the area, really ramp up the monitoring and with programs like Starry Trek or AIS detectors from MACERC. And this kind of speaks to the approach, and the commissioner touched on it a little bit. But really what we've been working towards is finding leaders in the communities and then building relationships between the different entities that do this work. So in the Boundary Waters, it's 1854 Treaty Authority, the Forest Service, Soil and Water Conservation Districts, representatives of the Lake Association, a representative from the Minnesota DNR, representative from Quantico Provincial Park. And together we're able to do things that none of us could do independently. As citizens, we can do things that agencies can't do. Agencies have authorities that we lack. And by meshing these things, we're able to have kind of a greater impact, I guess, and create a network. Commissioner Strommen talked about partnerships. Another term that we've used is civic infrastructure. So building civic infrastructure around water so that lake associations aren't working in isolation, but they're working with partners, because these lakes are important to everybody in the community. The Chamber of Commerce has a stake in healthy lakes. Realtors have a stake in healthy lakes. It's not just the anglers and the boaters and the shoreline people. And what these relationships represent power. And I believe it's the long-term solution, is getting smarter about connecting. So our legislative agenda for 2023 is wake surfing. The St. Anthony Falls Lab Study Phase 2, they did the research this summer, late summer and into fall. So they have the data. They're a little bit short on their funding. So I'll put out information about how to connect with them, but it's important. They're looking at the impacts of prop thrust on lake bottoms. How deep do these boats have to be before they don't churn up the bottom? Property tax relief for market-driven property tax increases. The highest one I've seen was 115% in a single year. And that really can put people in tough positions where they have to think about subdividing or selling, in which case the property is often redeveloped and there's more impact to the lake. It's unfair. It's difficult for families to manage. So there's all kinds of impacts from high property taxes on Lakeshore at the time we're trying to protect and restore Lakeshore. Aquatic plant management, the grants the commissioner mentioned, and trying to elevate the amount of money and the amount of money available to do the science, the monitoring, the kind of baseline work that needs to be done on our lakes to get a good idea as to where these aquatic plant communities are, what they're made up of. Are they expanding? Are they retreating? What does that look like? The DNR permit process can be a bit clunky and expensive and frustrating. And we're going to be working on that, trying to streamline or improve that. Aquatic invasive species, and it's a little bit difficult because the permitting for AIS is in one division and the native plants are in a different division. And so if you've got both native plants that are overabundant and invasive plants, it can get very, very complicated. And I think we're going to be seeing more and more of this kind of, more complex permitting needs. The commissioner mentioned the boat ramp improvements. We've been working since we first started to get a 5-year plan, coordinated statewide plan from the DNR that includes not just what the DNR will be doing on AIS, but what the counties are going to be doing and what lake associations are going to be doing, and coordinating those efforts so that we get better bang for the buck and kind of a more dynamic approach, I guess. And then this idea of exporting Minnesota's water. I've been talking about it for a few years. The articles are kind of getting more frantic. The last one I saw said that one of the big dams out west, if things don't change, if the trends don't change, could be out of water mid-July of next year. One of the hydroelectric dams, not have enough water to run the electrical dam. So I think that exporting water to other parts of the country is a bad idea. I mean, you look at the town of Phoenix, right? And we know what a phoenix is. It's a bird that rises from the ashes, right? And Phoenix was named Phoenix because it was built on the ruins of a society that had collapsed 1,200 years before Europeans showed up. And that old city, that ancient abandoned city, it was abandoned because they ran out of water in a dry period, was built on the ruins of a city that was 5,000 years old that had been abandoned because they ran out of water. So shipping water might not be sustainable, I don't think. And really one of our key goals for this year, and I would appreciate any help any of you can offer. But we've been between 3,000 and 4,000 members, individual members, since we started. The issues are getting more complex. We've got more Lake Association people, so we've got more people engaged in the issue, but it hasn't resulted in more members. We're at a point now where there's things that should be done to promote our issue, to promote clean lakes, and it's a matter of capacity, and I don't have the capacity. So I think we need to grow, and we're going to be reaching out to people, trying to find, what are the issues that are really important to people? How do we communicate these to other people that haven't made the decision to join yet? What does it look like? Can we organize ourselves in a different way? This is going to be an ongoing effort throughout the year. And so any help you have, I would be grateful for. And thank you. I guess, are there any questions? I can look at the questions here if you have any. Oh, there's a statement here from Jackie Anderson about the one watershed, one plan. And a lot of them are nearing the final planning stages of this. And if one of your issues, if a project on your lake or in your watershed that would benefit your lake is named in the plan, then it becomes fundable through the Clean Water Council. Shoreline restoration protection, we should be lobbying for this. And in fact, we are. So I've been meeting monthly, or maybe slightly less than that. I know Joe Schneider's on here. He's been representing Mincola, Freshwater Society, Bowser, representatives have been on these calls, DNR. We're calling it kind of the Shoreline Working Group. Dorothy Whitmer, who I believe is on this call from Gull Lake, testified yesterday, I think, before the Legislative Water Commission on shoreline issues, and they want to bring her and I back to discuss this. So that shoreline is very much on our radar. Boat ramps, accommodating wakeboard boats and much larger pontoons, and all kinds of, boats are getting larger and faster. How do we stop the loss of water from aquifers breached by Line 3? That is a big question. And I don't have an answer for that. Exporting water is a slippery slope and not good for our ecology. I agree. Separation of Lake Association members and individual members. Perhaps individuals don't join MLR when they're a member of a Lake Association membership. That is something that we've thought of. And I wonder if any of you, in your experience, have encountered this. Because the math on it doesn't work. There's 500 and some odd lake associations in the state. The average contribution of a lake association is about $150 annually. So you do the math and you end up with about $75,000, which is about what we spend on communications and postage and so forth for the organization. So, both for the legislature, so I can go in and say we have 30,000 members or we have 50,000 members. Numbers matter a great deal. And just to keep the lights on, we need individual members. Publicize that. I wasn't aware. Okay, well, I think I just did. I will more. Maybe at Lake Association meetings, I try and bring this up. Perhaps it's a matter of bringing together Lake Association leaders, officers and so forth, and seeing if they can carry this message to their membership. That would be a big help. If you email me, I get them, I answer them. Many of you have, I recognize many of your names. Membership toolkit. That's a great idea. What does it cost to join MLR? It's open. We have members. One of the things that's interesting is if you look at our membership, a little bit more than half of the members of MLR have been members for 10 years or more. So the members are pretty solid that we have. But we get $5 checks, $10 checks in the mail, and we get $500 to $1,000 checks. People contribute what they can. And, we've talked about, do we have a minimum membership fee? Do we try and restructure that? People that have been in for a decade, I'd hate to ask them to, well, you need to contribute more or you're out. That doesn't seem right. Yes, there is a clear set of priorities and measurable outcomes. And I can share those with people. We're developing them now. Yes, there is a way to see what lakes and rivers have lake associations. If you go on our website, many of them are listed. The ones that have a website, they're a hot link, so you can click on them. Jane Krentz, so if we built in a portion of Lakes Association dues to also join MLR, there is a lake association in the state that is piloting this issue where they're contributing $10 from every single member they have to MLR as individual memberships for their association members. And we want to see, does this work? Will people engage then? Will they continue to contribute on their own and stay engaged and open emails and send emails to their legislators? I had no idea this organization existed until my association president asked for a board member to jump on this call. I work on water advocacy in northeastern Minnesota and had never heard of MLR. Well, I am sorry. I imagine you're in the Cook County Coalition of Lake Associations, and I've spoken at a number of their meetings. Oh, and welcome to a new member from Horseshoe Lakes in Cass County. And I'm glad. Thank you for your kind words. Oh, Itasca County. Okay. Is where the person from northeastern Minnesota is located. Well, it's 8:18, and I think the questions seem to be slowing down. If you have anything you want to get to me, please email. And thank you so much for taking the time to be on this call. And thank you so much for all of the work you do. I mean, I'm looking through the names here, and the contribution of the people that are on this call towards protecting lakes and rivers in Minnesota is profound and humbling. And I am grateful. So be well, and happy Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's celebration. We'll celebrate in the dark days. Thank you.